And greetings, and we are live now on our platform. We want to welcome everyone to African Queen Mother Warriors Rising, a live podcast hosted by us collectively, Sister Dr. Sandra, Sister Queen Esther, Queen Mother Dr. Chinzira, and in all respects, we encourage persons to weigh in deeply on how we're going to be speaking truth to power in a collective fashion this evening. We're going to start off beyond our individual voices. We're going to speak in a form that allows for us to bring some truth to the elements here. With that being said, I'm going to shift from this and go right into one of our powerful hopefully everyone isn't tuned in. We're asking you to be patient with us. There's a lot going on.
Hearing sound?
No. You need to share sound?
I did. But we'll try again. It's a lot going on tonight.
Yeah, it's all good. It's all good.
Tonight. Can you hear?
Yes.
Give thanks. And I yield to my African Queen Mother Warriors who are sharing this platform this evening. We're really honored and privileged to have with us very esteemed, very regal, fierce, powerful, intelligent, and wise African Queen Mother Warriors in the embodiment of Sister Dr. Sandra. African Queen Mother Warriors. Sister Queen Esther. And I get the honor and privilege to just be on this element. We say hosting, but this is more like a co-host, like a conversation amongst the strand. Having a, we won't call it a fireside chat, we'll just call it the real chat, the article chat. And we were really able to bring some intentionality to, for those persons that aren't familiar with African Queen Mother Warriors. It's an initiative that started, or I shouldn't say had a very recent start, but almost 9 years ago, there were several convenings that took place around Pan-Africanist gatherings, reparatory justice, reparations, decolonization, self-determination initiatives. And there was a series of entities that gathered, and there was always some of the most intelligent people, some of the most proactive leaders of Pan-Africanism. We're very grateful for that. Lots of information. And there's a common thread that we'll speak to tonight of what transpired. So before I go into that story, I think it's really important for my sisters to weigh in. How are you feeling? I'll start with you, Sister Doctor.
I am giving thanks. I'm giving thanks for life. I'm giving thanks for the journey. I'm giving thanks for the lessons learned. It is a privilege and an honor, actually, to be in the presence of African Queen Mother warriors. Queen mothers who are doing the work, not just talking about the work. And so I feel good and I am ready for our interaction and for our sharing.
Give thanks to our turn. African Queen Mother Warriors, Sister Queen Esther.
Greetings. Yes, I'm also giving thanks and feel very joyful at this time because I'm connecting with both of you and also all the other African Queen Mother Warriors by extension. And I think it's a really important space that is being reinvigorated here today. And a lot is happening out there in the wider movements that we are part of that require us to be amplifying the voices of all the women, all the mother workers, all of those who are contributing to building, movements for reparatory justice, our nationhood, advancing our nationhood, our peoplehood struggles. And it's just so important that we have this platform because we don't hear enough of the voices of our women, our mothers, our queen mothers, who are doing more than half of the labor, but yet are not necessarily being seen and their voices not being amplified and their works not being recognized. So I'm very grateful for this opportunity and for the conversation that I know we're going to have.
This is always a joy and a privilege. So with that being said, shall I go to the history of what kind of initiated this? Okay. And if there's any areas that I leave out of the center of the conversation, just know it's because we're not sanitizing what we're talking about. We're just making sure that it is received in the medicinal, ancestral, loving, yet direct manner in which it's being delivered. Because many times when African Queen Mother Warriors move as African Queen Mother Warriors, it's one thing to call a woman a queen or to refer to our daughters as princess or refer to other eldest women as empress. But then when they really behave like an empress, a queen, and a princess, it gets met with a certain amount of challenge. So we're really hoping that persons that are listening and tuning in are hearing, yes, but more importantly, are listening to the nuggets of truth, justice, order, reciprocity, balance, divine righteousness, and harmony. Here we go. That.
Let's be clear. The principles and practices are what guide our activities. and form our parameters. I think the warrior part is a really important part, because oftentimes women are viewed in a particular way, and we're not here to bash anyone or any group. We form the basis of the African family. And when an African woman starts to get quiet, the world should worry. So we are speaking before anyone gets worried, and we are being clear. We are not asking permission. We are going to tell it like it is. So how do we come to be together?
And the way that we came to be together, we were at this wonderful convening by, shall I say, the Institute of the Black World, amongst other organizations. There were representatives from the UN, from the Working Group of Experts for People of African Descent, and this was April 2015. We were in New York, and it was a wonderful intentionality. You know, you had persons from the Caribbean Pan-African Network, from CARICOM Reparations Commission in its newly developing stages, you know, right around the time that this 10-point plan that was initiated back in those times was put together and formalized, coming out of the World Conference Against Racism earlier in the early 2000s. And there were a lot of changes in what was the OAU becoming the African Union. So there were like a lot of things converging. And there was a lot of discussion, a lot of wonderful bits of information. However, the question came forward for, are there questions in the audience? And we were invited, and I say we, members of the audience that were not panelists in that particular iteration, towards the closure of this convening in April 2015. And so several persons came to the mic, and the majority of them were women from different parts of the world, you know, from Eurasia, Africa, Caribbean, 48 contiguous US. I think there was a sister that was from the Pacific Islands. I'm not going to swear that, but she was from like Vanuatu or something like that. But the bottom line is we came because we were invited for Q&A. And the situation obviously escalated when some of our African Queen Mother warriors, even before this iteration manifested, came to the mic and asked very direct questions on the authentic inclusivity of African women in these convenings in terms of positions of leadership, not positions of leadership with no authority and power, but authentic positions of leadership that we could actually do things and implement and have the right resources for what we were doing. And the conveners of this esteemed gathering chose to turn off the PA system and start to hurriedly pack up things because they were saying they had another evening event to prepare for. That was more than 3 hours later. And we weren't finished, and they turned off power. And usually some women, African Queen Mother warriors or not, may have just, well, you know, they have another event. Even if it's 3 hours away, we'll be able to have these conversations and ask our questions later. But because of the manner and the outright rudeness and disregard for the importance or the value of these sisters coming to this mic after being invited to engage in Q&A, it escalated to where we just they were pulling out the furniture, packing up the chairs, and we just kept a few chairs for us to sit down. We watched each other, and some of us were meeting each other or seeing each other for the first time in a long time. But the synergy is that this disrespect in public places under the guise of politeness will end today. That day in April 2015. And from there, we did do and again, wasn't the most professional video persons that are listening and viewing that want to see that video can easily just look for African Queen Mother Warriors on the parent YouTube page, and you'll see it. It's been there since we posted it in April 2015, and then it followed up with a press statement. But ultimately, there were certain directives in that international press statement, and the way most persons, no matter how progressive they were or are, no matter what entities they lead, well or not, their response was more of silence, as if to not even give it any credence, any attention, any energy, and maybe we'll just kind of roll away, which is not the case. Have I covered that pretty concisely, Sister Doctor?
I think you did a really good job. I think you did a really good job. The only thing I would add would be to really emphasize the disrespect. I mean, it wasn't a subtle disrespect. It was an obvious, blatant disrespect. It was tainted with arrogance, because what had happened in that conference space was various convenings and workshops and breakout spaces to inform what would be an international communique coming from this conference. And the organizers had arranged for a photo opportunity. So the optics were amazing. We were all in front of this camera with this banner across the front as delegates of a conference that had this communique that seemed to have come from all of us. And actually, that was not true. The 10-point plan had been not necessarily challenged, but the points were being raised that the 10 points were insufficient for the African family. And as African women, we were raising this so that the 10-point plan could be enhanced, or there would be a revisiting of 10 points. It was like there was this rigid sticking to 10 points, and that this whole communique, which was considered to be the official voice of the conference, had been written and agreed in what I call a back room. So there was the conference with all of the delegates and the conversations, but somewhere there was a different conversation going on that culminated in this international statement that we were all apparently and allegedly party to. In actual fact, as you have mentioned, beloved Senate Doctor, in our attempt to ensure that whatever went out was holistic and took into account all aspects, there was a definite public attempt to humiliate us. And I think that is the moment when we became forged as African Queen Mother warriors. We recognized that something needed to be done because all of the officials were closing down the event. What happened and what happens is that God gets involved. And so the transport that was supposed to be hurriedly taking us back to our respective hotels in preparation for another event apparently broke down. So there we were in this space with time to formulate and be informed by spirit, which is when we formed. We grabbed some chairs as they were pulling chairs away, and we sat and we made the video. And when we completed that, The transportation showed up. Now, you tell me. Yeah, I think you covered everything, African Queen Mother Warrior.
I'm welcoming the amendments. Those are accurate. And would you like us to read the statement so that the viewers and listeners that aren't as familiar or may have not seen the video? I do have that. I can cue that up and we can actually read it directly from the screen unless you wanted to.
That's perfect. This statement is our response to what had taken place. So there was the organizers' international communique, and there was the African Queen Mother Warriors official communique. We can share that. Not hearing you. Okay. And this was formulated in May 2015. In
Yes.
2015, the global reparations movement of the 21st century is in alignment with the United Nations designation of the International Decade for People of African Descent to run from 2015 to 2024. Theme of People of African Descent, Recognition, Justice, and Development. What does that translate into for our people? Respectfully, all the voices and actions with sacred intentions for our liberation, unification, and sovereign social governance are to be included.
I take it it's not moving.
It's not moving.
Okay, we'll try something different. My bad, forgive us. Let's see if we can do this a little different.
I'll continue until you resolve that. In simple terms, without equal male and female involvement in the reparations movement, there can be no recognition, justice, and development. This international statement is being shared to expose and present proactive resolutions to the negative behaviors and actions that continue to plague many Pan-African, Black reparations and related movements, as manifested during the International Reparations Summit hosted by the Institute of the Black World 21st Century in New York from April 9th to 11th, 2015. The use of our images in a photograph alongside a final communique implying consensus is totally unacceptable, especially in the absence of transparency. The Eurocentric paradigms, which ignore established African-centered traditions and life practices, are not conducive to our demand for reparatory justice. As the African Union hosts the annual International Summit on the theme of 2015 Year of Women's Empowerment and Development towards Africa's Agenda 2063, and the world commemorates, memorializes, and celebrates African Liberation Day, African women must be respected. In unity with our brothers and sisters of humanity, African Queen Mothers and revolutionary women warriors have united in order to have our voices heard by publishing this international statement. The issues raised herein are being shared in the spirit of love, peace, harmony, reciprocity, truth, justice, order, and balance. Through African consensus, this statement calls for revolutionary corrective actions for the end of willful disrespect, marginalization, exclusionism, intellectual warfare, internalized sexist terrorism, misogyny, pathological patriarchy, and genocidal violence against African women anywhere and everywhere, particularly within the organizational and institutional frameworks of these organizations, including summits, congresses, conventions, and conferences. In any gathering, it is imperative that we not only call upon the names of our benevolent ancestors, but that we ceremoniously invite their presence in the most appropriate and respectable manner. The failure to safeguard and to provide optimal protection and security is a serious issue. The publishing of delegates' names in public foyers is a risk on several levels. Unhealthy foods have no place in these gatherings. In keeping with our African cosmology and sacred number traditions that value the extensive spiritual significance of numbers, we question the adoption of a 10-point plan that is not only modeling a Eurocentric value system, but devoid of a spiritual component and feminine aspect. We, African Queen Mothers and revolutionary women warriors, decree to our nation and all of humanity that the wanton acts of disrespect, disregard, and threatening theatrics imposed upon African women by men and patriarchy-controlled women will no longer be tolerated. Period. And the word African is our self-determination term for our ancestral lands, people, and resources, meaning ancestral flesh of Ra, light, spirit, peace.
I'm processing everything that you've just said because it's been almost 9 years. And we reflect and we recall what that does, what that means, how that's read. So with that being shared, I would also weigh in because African Queen Mother Warrior, Sister Queen Esther,
Yeah.
we welcome your presence and we're very honored to have you with us because you have been on this tribe for decades. And we're grateful for you giving voice of how you reflect what was your perspective, what were your feelings, not just the emotional part, but what did you see? How did it hit you when you read this particular piece?
You want to stop sharing?
I'm not sure. I thought I did stop sharing and then it won't go. Getting there, we're going to find something else to share. And then it'll give us something else to share, right? A second. Find something.
Okay. Right.
So it did stop sharing that. So now it stopped sharing. Where we go? We're good.
Okay, great. So yes, I remember very well this statement when it came out. I can't remember how I found out about it, but it was circulating on social media, and I was really, really pleased to see it because the fact that as women you had come together, African Queen Mother warriors, and you had made this intervention in at the time, was quite an important space in the diaspora around convening different voices for reparations. And it was a definitive space in some respects and has gone on to what formed at that conference has gone on to, do other stuff around reparations. So I remember seeing African Queen Mother Warrior, Sister Queen Isis, who is also based in the UK where I am, and connecting with her. I think we had some dialogue around women in the movement and what was happening. And so I remember connecting with her, reaching out to her almost immediately, saying, how do I get involved with this? I want to connect with some of these women. And I was particularly interested because the year before, in 2014, I believe it was, I'm part of a coalition called PARCO, the Pan-African Reparations Coalition in Europe. And we had, when CARICOM had announced its reparatory justice initiative, we had come out with an open letter to the CARICOM heads of government, an initial open letter, and then it was followed up by a position paper where we were raising similar concerns, but not necessarily from a women's and African women's perspective, but certainly concerns around how the plan had been produced, the role of our communities, who we knew were largely excluded. We knew this because we're in touch with communities on the ground in the Caribbean region, and everyone was saying the same thing. So, and it was hard though to find people who were speaking up and speaking out. And so this was, in addition to what we had done, this was like the first time I had seen a collective, not just an individual or individuals, but a collective of women representing obviously many of the women, the Queen Mothers, the Sister Queens who were there, really speaking up. And it really mattered because when the corporate media, the corporate white stream media is beginning to champion this process and these initiatives as though they are really coming from our people, that was of concern to us because we knew that our people, as I said, had largely been marginalized. And the fact that you were elevating and centering the voices of women who were largely and have been and continue to largely be marginalized in this space, although in all of my experience of being a reparations, community-based reparations scholar activist, I see a lot of the organizing, a lot of the strategizing, a lot of the work around reparations and movement building is done by women. But yet this is not reflected in who is often seen as being the leaders, who is kind of, speaking out in the public, whose voices are being carried and amplified. And so it was a really, really significant intervention. And from what the statement, when reading back the statement, it was very clear it wasn't just about women, and the paragraph that I really love is that paragraph that says, this statement calls for revolutionary corrective actions for the end of the willful disrespect, marginalization, exclusionism, intellectual warfare, internalized sexist terrorism, misogyny, pathological patriarchy, and genocidal violence against our African women. And it goes on. I love that paragraph because it's so apt to be speaking out on these terms. And again, why I really empathized and related and felt a synergy with this statement is that I had been in other organizing spaces at the time, was involved in an initiative called the Interim National African People's Parliament in the UK. and an issue came up around sexual violence and allegations of rape being made by women in the Caribbean against heads of government. Let me just put it that way. And I can remember being contacted by women's activists in the respective countries who were really calling out reparationists like myself and others for what they felt was colluding or not doing enough to recognize the voices of women. And that when women were trying to say, these are the issues that we are facing as legacies of African enslavement, what some of us refer to in the Kiswahili tongue as the Maangamizi, that somehow they were being told, largely by men, that this was a diversionary issue. It didn't have a place. That was a women's issue that belonged somewhere over there and was not central or should not be brought into reparations movement spaces. And we challenged that. We challenged that officially in some of the spaces where we knew particular men were going to be represented, and we did raise this as an issue of concern that was impacting many of our family members, and that as reparationists we had to hear those voices, whether it was convenient or not. And I can remember even being accused of actually trying to side with oppressive forces, including, government agents in North America who were trying to bring down Caribbean leaders. I was accused of that because I was simply amplifying the voices of women campaigners who were struggling to be heard and who were saying, this is a reparations issue. The way that women are treated, the internalized, not only internalized sexism, but the sexism, the male chauvinism, the violence that is still continuing, the sexual violence, the harassment that is still continuing of women and girls has to stop. So that is why, from being a recipient, I was so pleased to see that there was a group of women who had come together in an international space, such as this gathering this conference in the US that you came together for, and that you were raising these voices, and you were also raising issues of African culture and how we kind of conduct our affairs when we're calling on, we're literally, staking a claim on the basis or on the foundation of our African ancestors and ancestresses, but yet we don't even know how to appropriately call them into the space. We don't know how to honor the space when we're kind of standing on their shoulders to make claims that ultimately will involve resources and trying to secure a redistribution and a restitution of those resources. So raising for me, which I'm very, very strong on and care a lot about, the issue of ethics, African reparations ethics in these convenings that we have when we're calling our people together, and how we should be repairing ourselves in the process. So you raise issues of the kind of food that gets served, the cultural frameworks. Are we appropriately opening our meetings? Are we recognizing and honoring our ancestors and ancestresses? The importance of what we call things when we organize, right? Whose knowledge frameworks, whose epistemologies are we using, and are we still standing on Eurocentrism, but yet trying to claim reparations for African people? So those issues came out in this statement, and I thought it was a brilliant statement, and it is still relevant because, dare I say, a lot of these practices continue, and they continue in the spaces, in the convenings that some of the people that would have been there in 2015, some of the people that you would have been actually, speaking to, and trying to sort of, educate about, well, this is not the correct way. It's like they didn't hear anything, because that dominant culture that is not our people's culture that is, you know, anti-African in many respects, actually predominates in many reparation spaces today. And I believe that as reparationists, or whoever we say we are, if we're working on issues of reparatory justice, reparations, however people call it, I believe that we have to be honorable and that we also have to be the change. It's not just about us pointing fingers at others about what they owe us or what they should be doing, but what should we be doing for ourselves? And how are we also showing that we are repairing ourselves and therefore um, putting ourselves in the right place and position to be able to legitimately advocate for and claim to be um, representatives of our people.
That's powerful. That's really powerful. Can I come in here? Because
Absolutely.
that is food. That is food. Interestingly, one of the paragraphs that sits with me, even when I don't read out the entire statement, is we African Queen Mothers and Revolutionary Women Warriors decree to our nation and all of humanity that the wanton acts of disrespect, disregard, and threatening theatrics imposed upon African women by men and patriarchy controlled women will no longer be tolerated. Because in some of these spaces, and I've been doing this for decades, not just this I didn't just come to this. Sometimes people are confused by how we move. And because they see us moving a certain kind of way, they think they know who we are. But actually they don't. They underestimate us. What we are lovers of our African family. What we are obedient children of the Most High. What we are ones who are able to stand on the shoulders of those who have gone before. So we are not in any way confused, neither are we arrogant, neither are we afraid of these thinly veiled threats. I myself have been subject to threats. Some are thinly veiled, and some are so ridiculously clumsy and obvious that it makes me wonder about these charismatic, arrogant hijackers of a movement that impacts the African family. We are not gathered to hate on anyone. That's why we open with a love song. We are here to project and pronounce a love for our family that makes us prepared to speak out. Now, we're not asking for anyone to let us in. We don't need to be let in. If we unleash that which we know and which we have documented and which we have receipts for, the thing will fall. The thing will fall because we will not hide, because we are fearful that we will be tainted. Our characters will be challenged. We have no fear of that. What we are clear about is that we cannot sit idly by and watch this continue. A second decade has been announced. What are we going to do? Continue in the same vein? I think not. I think not. The optics concern me. When people are talking about reparations in the African family, I see men, and dashikis and some very interesting things. I don't see the balance. Families cannot come forward without the balance. There must be men and women. There must be more than one perspective. If you raise your voice and are threatening, we will not cower. We will not do that. For we bring forth men and we will call out old boys and boy networks. Because you are up in age, it doesn't make you a man. And your arrogance has a very foul odor. We demand that the voice of the African woman is heard in any movement relative to the African family. Men alone cannot bring forth an African family, and we will be respected. We will not be controlled, molested, sidelined. We will not be controlled by puppet masters, accused, discredited. No, we will not do that. So I look forward to future podcasts and future revelations, for there are many. There are many revelations to come as we make this second decade one that is far more balanced and ma'atical. We are not hearing you because you are muted, Queen.
They didn't need to hear exactly what I said that particular second, so I will do the cleanup version. Ashe, do I with her. What eloquent words to address such a serious engagement, because that's why there's a lot of balance when sistren come forward. We always talk about our African Queen Mother warriors, yes, and persons sometimes when they hear the term warrior, they just think fight, fear, struggle. We're operating from a very ancestral, ancient African, Nubianu, Kushanu, Kemetu heritage legacy. See how that went? We're going very old schoolish, like so old schoolish that some people, I'm not sure if I remember that. Was that in the textbook? Was that in the memo? Right, they're not sure how to respond, because sometimes we will come and notice that, as our African Queen Mother warrior sister, Dr. Sandra shared, we started with a love song. And we have to give a special shout out to Sister Desiree, winning world-renowned artist, for just putting those words through a lens, because it's love first. We love our children and humanity, ourselves, so much most of the time when we are left free to do that, that we're going to be protective. So it may come across that some of the language is, what is that term? Abrasive, sharp, may almost come across as a little aggressive. But think of it this way. Wouldn't you rather hear the truth? Someone that is being very engaging and pleasant with you, than to have them just come cuss off with like a whole bunch of daggers and stuff and backbite you and be this slow. You know, that one. We're working towards how do we bring up these different types of conversations. That's why we're having this resurgence of African Queen Mother warriors in the 2025, moving into 2025 year. Because there are sisters out here that we're learning more about that have experienced the same thing. And we're seeing it in all types. I can go down the list of organizations where this is manifesting. And many times we do not take the time to reason in a public sphere, because of course, you see how we reasoning now, it could get a little bit extra offline. But when, we have a saying, close your door, beat your child. Right. We're not doing this thing to air out nothing. We're just sharing that the layers, and I think we've heard it from both of our sisters here, this wanton disrespect and disregard for our existence and this type of planetary freshman misbehavior, it done. Okay, let me say it better. It will no longer be tolerated in this lifetime or the next one. And after that, that's what we're saying. And we're saying it from a place of strength and harmony. And our authentic ancient African, Nubian, Kushanu, Kemetu heritage legacy men, we know that you have us in the center and respect that. Who respects someone that doesn't allow themselves to be respected? And we have been through enough trauma, period. So it's time for the other 180 degrees. We did the 180 of chaos. So it would be welcoming to do the balance and do a 180 of authentic mod. With that being said, see how fast that hour went? I'm so grateful because we know that we would like to make sure that persons have a way of reaching us, and if they have other questions, other commentaries, if there's particular issues you sense that we need to bring to the table. Needless to say, each of us have our lists, and we're looking for our listeners and our viewers to bring to the table those other issues that we may overlook periodically, because we've covered quite a bit in a short time. But we felt that it was important for persons to know what initiated this African Queen Mother Warriors. It's not that we didn't have African Queen Mother Warriors in general from all different parts of the earth, but this particular experience at that particular time during the whole she frou frou on International Decade for people of African descent. Oh, and the International Decade for people that are Afro descendants, which is something we'll get to in another broadcast, or even all of the different iterations of reparatory justice or reparations. Should you say slave? Should you say enslaved? Should you call it trafficking? Should you call it the Maangamizi or the Ma'apa? What is that phrase that you tend to use? English is
Not my first language.
boom. We would like to get to the next layer as we move forward and as we get ready to close for tonight. We know that we're going to have a forthcoming iteration. We're going to move to having a regular versation on the third Sunday morning of each month, starting January. Make sure we have this date right. I believe I put it down the 19th, January 19th. And our aim is to meet at 8 a.m. Atlantic time, 12 noon UK time, and we're asking everybody else to do all the different math and conversions in your respective area. But keep an eye out for African Queen Mother Warriors Rising. There, you can also reach us at African Queen Mother Warriors at gmail.com. And we'll make sure that that's inside of the YouTube page in case people start forgetting, because we don't spell African regular. It's AFRAKAN, right? It's the soul and the flesh of Ra. We are light. How about that? And we're taking that light in ascension to the next level. Please, Sister Dr. Sandra, Royal African Queen Mother Warrior. Reflection.
I am so relieved that we have come to this place where we have given sufficient time. When you birth anything, you have to allow that gestation, and we have allowed it, and it's time for us to be rebirthed anew in a Nubian space with a spiritual essence, with integrity. As things are right now, as I reflect, I notice that the conflicts of interest are so apparent. How is it that one can have one foot in civil society and another foot in government or academic institutions and not have due regard for Rastafari and for women? Anything that you do is off balance because of how you are operating. There are too many conflicts and too much disregard. Spirituality and ancestral indigenous ways of being must be part of what we do. And as I reflect, I think this: in that conference, when we were forged, we had not met before, many of us had not met, and we trod on purpose, called to do this work. And some arrogant, egotistical people turned off the PA system. They cut off the mic and felt very comfortable. Well, first of all, you can't cut off this mic. And secondly, we've come to drop it. We've come to drop the mic. I can be found and reached at iam.sysdoctor. iam.sysdoctor. This is a new day. Be careful how you move. Peace.
Give thanks for that sharing. Do on with her. Sister Queen Esther.
Yeah, I'm thankful. I'm thankful to be here and to be working with you. And yes, I'm just really looking forward to our further podcasts where we're going to be touching on many of the issues that are coming up. And we're just going to be reasoning as African Queen Mother Warriors, as sistering. And yeah, we look forward to hearing from you all as time goes forward and connecting with you. And yeah, in future podcasts, I hope to be able to share more about some of the work that I'm involved in. But initially, if people want to contact me, I'm contactable. Uh, mm, how am I contactable?
If
I'm
they reach you, they can email
yeah, okay, all right.
Mother
Um,
Warriors.
yes, that's right, that's right. What's the email address again?
African Queen Mother Warriors at gmail.com.
That's the place. That's the place to go.
Right. I realize
Otherwise, people know how to find me. It's easy to
exactly.
find me.
Exactly. Because I know that we see you in abundance. And for persons, check for any one of us on Facebook, Twitter, excuse me, X, Instagram, YouTube. The podcast is going to be left up on the Speaks YouTube page, and it will also be shared inside of Speaks and Chinzira Kahina and everyone else's networks on Facebook. We're actually just populating it so persons can see and share and tune in and welcome this vibration. There is a word from a brother that I'd like to share, and that is none other than one of the great African heads of state that many of us had the honor and privilege of working with before he was executed for being a revolutionary. And that is none other than the Honorable President Thomas Noel Sankara. And he has several quotes about women, several writings about women, but this particular one resonates for what we've just been sharing tonight. The revolution and women's liberation go together. We do not talk of women's emancipation as an act of charity or out of the surge of human compassion. It is a basic necessity for the revolution to triumph. Women hold up the other half of the sky, unquote. And that's again, not my words. President, honorable, upright president of Burkina Faso. And I think it's really important to just share that as we get ready to close. And also, just as we were opening and people were busy, what did you say? And we were doing these silent prayers because we keep the ancestral presence at the center of what we're doing. So I do offer greatest ma'at, Shehudi Sashait. Theirs are everlasting. They have been unchanged and consistent since Septipi, from the first time, from the noon's creation. from the time when AST, Asar, Heteru, Heru, Nebetet, Ainpu, established the natural way of Ma'at in Smaitawi in ancient Kush, Tamit, Tanatem, talking old times, Duan term. And may we all remember that we're each shining beings dwelling in light, and that we are blessed and protected in this work. So anytime you're hearing an authentic, unapologetic African Queen Mother Warrior speak, tune in, listen. Don't just hear her, but listen, so that we can actually move forward with some degree of strength and positivity. And we always end with Amasuan Panter, Sauksuan Ran Panter, Aura Maketi Paherura. English. We give thanks and praise to the one most high. We live each day daily for the one most divine. And we shall do it tomorrow, just as we do it today. With that being said, African Queen Mother Warriors, the word, shall we move forward? Ready?
Yes.
Sunday, January 19th, 8 a.m. Atlantic, noon, UK. We'll figure out some more information. Remember, you can email African AFRAKAN, Queen Mother Warriors @gmail.com, or look for us on any of the networks that have been shared with you for this evening. It's been an honor and a privilege to just spend sacred time with each of you. Give thanks. Duanter. I don't know. I think we might need to show our
Yes.
libation video one more
Yes,
time.
we do.
I thought
Yes, we do.
you're like, yeah, you forgot that part of this part of the show. I got so excited. You get too excited for a second there. I said, give thanks. Yeah, this is just a wonderful opportunity. You know, we could play this over and over again, but we're going to call it a night because we know it's late for some of us, and we give thanks and praise and those that are viewing and listening. Stay tuned. Remember, culture heals humanity. Land is our foundation, and spiritual harmony unifies us. Hotep Duanter.
And thanks.